Let me ask you something. When was the last time you assigned a task to your team without using the word urgent or as soon as possible? If you're struggling to remember, you might find that you are the fire starter for your team. And I don't mean the good kind, the one who inspires and motivates people. I mean the manager who creates false urgency, who turns tasks into crisis, and who can create a constant state of stress for their team. And honestly, the worst part about this is most managers who do it have absolutely no idea. I see it all the time when I'm delivering workshops. People are surprised to realize they are the fire starter. So today what I want to do is I want to help you figure out if you are the person creating false urgency for your team, and look, more importantly, how to stop. So let's get into it. The first thing I want to do is take a few minutes for you to reflect and consider your current situation. I'm going to ask you 4 questions and I want you to really be honest with yourself on these, okay? So the first question is, does your team often ask you, is this urgent, when you assign tasks? Maybe because they genuinely can't tell anymore. Question number 2, do you use words like ASAP, urgent, or as soon as possible more than once in a day? And if you're really honest with yourself, is it more like 5 times a day? Now, honestly, by the way, that was me for a long time. So don't worry, you're not the only one. Question 3 is, has your team stopped asking about deadlines because they've learned that for you, everything is urgent? And finally, question 4, do you regularly interrupt your team's planned work with new priorities that just can't wait? If you've answered yes to 2 or more of those questions, then it's likely that you are creating that false urgency on your team. And that can lead to unnecessary stress and burnout for your team members. They're working under a constant state of stress. They're not sure what's urgent and what's not. And so the really important things could fall through the cracks. And, even as a leader, you might be seen as somebody who, can't handle complex situations and who treats everything with the same urgency. And that doesn't look good either. So I want to talk about, how this happens and, more importantly, honestly, how to fix it. And through my experience, I found that there's 3 main ways that we can become the fire starters. And I want to share them with you. And then we can talk about how you can actually create a change. So the first way that you can create false urgency is by transferring your own stress onto your team without even realizing it most of the time. And honestly, I used to do this all the time. Like, I really was an urgent person, and I think it's because I was under so much pressure myself. So for example, imagine you've just come out of a heated meeting with senior leaders. They're demanding results, they're asking those tough questions. Maybe they're even criticizing the pace of work for yourself, your team. So you're stressed, you're feeling the pressure, and now you have a new task that needs to get done right now. So what to do? Like, do you go straight to your team and pass it on? And if you do, are you also passing on the stress that you're carrying? Like, it comes with the task. Is your tone tense? Our language is urgent. You might even say, oh, senior leadership are really pushing for this, which translates to, by the way, this is a crisis. And again, I used to do this all the time. And what I want you to remember is the stress isn't the task. Like, the task itself might have a reasonable timeline, a perfectly reasonable timeline, okay? It might not actually be that urgent, but how we feel about, the current situation, our emotional state turns that normal request into something urgent because there wasn't any space between you receiving the task and you passing it on. So the solution for this one is quite simple, but it's not always easy. And that's to create a little bit of space. Okay, so when you've just come out of a really stressful or pressure situation, whether that's with your manager, a leadership team, the department, whoever, take space before you go to your team. So take 10, 15 minutes, more time if you need to. Take a walk, get a tea, get a coffee, and just process your own emotions first. And then sit down and think, what does this task actually require? What's the real deadline? What is the level of urgency that is genuinely needed here? And then you can bring it to your team. You're calm, you're clear, you've got the right level of priority, and you're not carrying all that residual stress. And honestly, that's better for you too, because you're decompressing after a tough conversation. So, for your well-being, I also wanted to do this. Okay, So the second way then that managers can create false urgency is by being reactive instead of proactive. And in a management role, a lot of your work is reactive. But I do have a 2x2 framework that I think will really help you with this. So what I want you to do is think about everything on your desk, and we're going to break it down into 4 sections. So section A is your known knowns. So these are the things that you know need to be delivered, you know when they're due, you know what information is needed, you know what your team needs to do, okay? And this should be the easiest category. All right. Like they shouldn't become urgent unless, you know, there's been a change somewhere or we've dropped the ball on planning. And so all you need to know here is to make sure that your team has enough information early enough to actually plan and complete their work. So I don't want you to sit on the details here. I don't want you to wait until the last minute. As soon as you have the information, get it to them. So that's your known knowns, and make sure you communicate everything you do know early. Now, the second one is your known unknowns. So these are things that you know are coming, but you just don't have the detail yet. Like you definitely know that there's going to be something up. So it could be a quarterly thing, like a leadership review, and you know that there's going to be a lot of things asked of your team, but we just don't know what it is. Maybe there are other times of the year that you know that there's a large influx of work, but that detail has yet to be seen. And, you know, again, you've got some shape, but you don't have all the detail. And often what I see is managers wait until we've all the information before we say anything to our team. And then when the details finally arrive, oh, it's urgent. Okay. But instead of doing that, instead of waiting for everything, you could just say something like, I don't have the detail yet, but like we're coming into a busy time. So I'm expecting that we're going to be asked to do a lot, or to do some extra reporting, or to answer some extra questions. So I'm just flagging it now so you can keep some capacity available for that. So what you're doing here is you're not creating work for them immediately. You're just helping them plan. I suppose you're giving them an opportunity to create space. And that's really helpful for your team. And also then when the work does come in, they're not on the back foot. Okay, now the third section is the unknown knowns. And in my experience, this is where lots of fires get started at work. So these are things that at some level you know they need to be done, but they're not tracked anywhere officially. So they're like on your notebook, or they're in your phone, or they're in an email, okay? Like it's all the bits and pieces. And they're the things that you said, oh, I'll get back to that later on. And these are dangerous because we can forget about them, okay? There's probably an awful lot that you have to get done in any given day for your own work as well as supporting your team. And so it's easy for things to slip through the cracks. But then someone asks about it and suddenly it's urgent. But it's only urgent because we didn't track it properly in the first place and pass it on to our team. So the thing is, if it's important enough to do, it's important enough to track. Okay, if you said yes to doing it, it needs to be in your system, whatever system that is, all right? And share it with your team if it's their work. You know, don't wait until the next team meeting, don't wait until you see them next. Find a way to communicate early to get it out of your mind and into the place where it needs to be so people can actually get the work done and so it doesn't creep up. And finally, the final section is the unknown unknowns. Like, we don't know everything that's going to come up, all right? Like, there's no way you can know everything. And the most important thing we can do is build some buffer into our work days, into our team's working weeks, so that if something unexpected does come up, we can actually respond to it, all right? So that really is taking a look at the workload and making sure that, you know, it's not to the max, that there's no wiggle room, all right? And I'm not saying like leave a half an hour free each day. I need a little bit more than that depending on your work, because honestly, the things that come up that are unexpected usually need a little bit more effort than that. And if you're conscious then, or if you're worried about productivity, maybe if something doesn't come up, you can always have like a list of secondary non-urgent tasks that people can work on, you know, if that time does end up being free. Okay, so that's the 2x2 matrix. I find it really helpful, and I would run through that once a week just to make sure that, you know, you're not forgetting anything. So the third thing that I see come up, this is the final thing, is that we sign arbitrary deadlines. So this is when you, as a manager, you just say, oh, I need this by Friday, or I need this by Tuesday. Not because you actually need it by Friday or Tuesday, but just because you want to give your team members some idea, some timeline so that they can organize their work. But the problem with this is that if we keep doing it, people cannot tell the difference between the real deadlines, you know, the ones that have to be done on a certain day, and those arbitrary ones. And so then they put them all together and they start treating everything as equally urgent, or they say there's conflict in priorities, conflict in deadlines, when really that might not be the case. All right. And so what we need to do is we need to start separating the different kinds of deadlines. So for example, you could say, I need this by Thursday at 3 p.m. because I'm presenting to senior leadership on Friday morning and I need time to review it on Thursday afternoon. Okay. So that lets people know when you need it, why you need it, what's happening next. It's really, really good. Okay. Now, on the other hand, if there's not, a fixed deadline, you could just say, look, there's no hard deadline on this, but ideally sometime this week so we could discuss it in our next one-to-one. And that gives the other person a little bit more flexibility to fit that in around the other work. Okay, so you're giving them back more autonomy on their schedule. And I find that can be really, really helpful. And ultimately, what we're doing here is improving how we communicate with our team. All right. So, in the first idea, we're being aware of the emotion and the tone that we can bring to a conversation and creating a space there so that we don't pass that on to our team unintentionally. In the second idea, it's really about making sure that we have clarity so we can communicate our needs to our team better and in a more timely fashion. And then the third one is all around, being mindful of those dates, of those deadlines, and giving people the flexibility to organize their work around those, I suppose, more open timelines while also being able to concentrate on those really fixed due dates. All right. And when we're communicating in this way, it shows your team that, there is stuff that is important. There is stuff that is urgent and does need to get done as soon as possible. But that's not everything. All right. And when we have that clear view of the different levels of importance and urgency and priority of our tasks, we're better able to balance our work during the day. Your team are better able to self-manage their work, which means less issues for you as well. So really, it is winning all around. So look, the first thing I'd like you to do after watching this video is to have a frank and open conversation with your team. Okay, maybe share this video with them and then ask them, is the team suffering from false urgency? And if it is, which of the three strategies do they think, and do you also think, would be best to start with? All right, because we don't have to do everything all at once, but we do need to make a change. Okay. And if you do that, I would love to hear you get on. Please let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe so you can see my next one and maybe share it with somebody who'd also benefit. Okay, that's it from me. I'll talk to you later. Bye.